This is Red Moon Role-Playing.
He smiles at you in a way that you suspect is meant to be reassuring, but there's something in the way that he doesn't blink and makes eye contact perfectly with you that tells you he feels in control here. And not in a self-assured, reasonable way. He feels like he has your strings in his hands. And yeah, he's aware of it. He's comfortable like this. This is his way of working. He continues. Now, I'm going to ask you something. His hand hasn't left. And believe you me, I am, and he leans forward, a great believer in the confidentiality of one's sources. But I need to know how it was that you came up with this idea in your paper that every one of those young men and women who were attacked were targeted by the same person, that you figured out somehow the common, according to your paper, they all came away from their assaults with the same parasitic infection. I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, do you have friends in the police or the hospital? Where did you pick up that connection?
I slowly begin to tremble because my back is against so many different walls and he is standing in between any response I might have for fight or flight. And shutdown seems to be the only response that my nervous system can seek out. In looking at him in this moment, is there anything that I can determine on the reason that he's asking me this? If I go back through all of these whiteboards that I have stuffed into my tiny little one-bedroom apartment, if I go back through all of my reporting, all of my interviews, the interviews with the victims, if I do go back and talk to that one deputy who was kind enough to spend an afternoon with me going over case files, if I go back through every single red strand that I have spread out over 4 different whiteboards in my room, is anything indicating why he specifically is asking me this question?
It's almost as if in the center of all of those whiteboards, all of those red strands, those strings pointing from one pin to the other, there is an empty gulf right in the center, a black hole, a void where there should be a suspect. Yeah, it's true what he's saying. Everyone who was attacked, who ended up in a hospital, not able to remember their attacker, they were all ultimately found to carry a low-level parasitic infection. Nothing that couldn't be cleared up with a routine course of drugs. But it was a commonality. One that you seized onto. Because the university itself was basically attributing all of these cases as students get drunk, students fall over, students forget where they are, students hit their heads. This is why no one can remember anything. His face doesn't suddenly form in that black hole in the middle of your whiteboard. But his curiosity, the fact that he does live on the campus along with many of the other lecturers, to be fair. The fact that you are here with him alone right now. He doesn't seem to be threatening you. He just wants the truth. And then he leans back. I understand. I get it. And he lifts both hands up, puts them beside his head, almost jazz hand style. I get it. You're not going to reveal your sources. I respect that completely. But I would love to talk to you a little more about your paper. Let's say this evening, after classes, you can come by my apartment on the campus. We can get something to eat. I'll get a pizza in. And I would love to talk about your method, because I have to say, and he leans forward again, out of all the students here, I would mark you as, well, a correspondent to watch.
Okay, yeah, if we could, yeah, yes, yeah,
Excellent.
We can talk about it. May I go?
Yeah, there's a definite feeling of having just been steamrolled.
Yeah.
In multiple directions. Like, you were being pulled one way and then all of a sudden bombarded with, it's okay, you can trust me, come to me in private later. And yeah, it doesn't suddenly alleviate any feelings of trepidation. But he smiles, he shows you all of his teeth as he does so. That will make my evening, Z. I will make sure I've got something nice in, and I tell you what, if you're not too bored of my war stories, there are a few I could share with you that I haven't shared with the rest of the class.
Yeah, that would be an honor.
Well, I don't know about that. Most of the time it's because they're inappropriate for the class, but hopefully some of them will make you laugh. Anyway, he stands up and he doesn't quite put his arm out for you, his hand for you to get up, but he is clearly not interested in you staying behind in this auditorium alone. He expects you to leave as well.
I rise to my feet. I clutch this backpack, the ripped backpack, to my chest. I am going to nod at him once, and I'm going to do that wide shoulder berth where you deliberately extend space to wrap around someone. Mm-hmm. And I am going to, and I'm using this word very intentionally, I'm going to escape from this lecture hall with as little dignity as I can muster.
He follows not far after, but doesn't engage you again. Clearly, Art Hurley knows how to navigate situations like this. Whether it's his force of personality, in fact, that's almost entirely what it is. Physically, he isn't exactly much of a specimen. He looks like a journalist. He's wiry. He is used to living in rough terrain and subsisting off of little, of putting himself in dangerous situations. But maybe that is in turn what has made him so, well, let's call it what it is, predatory in normal situations, in civilian land, among the young who are, frankly, when compared to someone like Art Hurley, utterly innocent. And so, yes, you are left to go back to your one-room apartment to breathe again. Shake a little. And otherwise wash off the feeling of having just been cornered. Tell me, Z, did it ever go through your head when you wrote that paper that the person responsible for these assaults might ultimately read it? Was there any part of you that planned that?
I could lie to you in this moment, but I don't think that would benefit either of us. I knew that the suspect had ties to the campus. And as I'm sitting on the floor in the corner of this one-bedroom apartment, where I've just cried my eyes out for the third time, my chin lifts and I'm looking at these four whiteboards. And there's a potential suspect list, mostly by departments. Campus security was a high-profile one. I had most of my eggs in that basket. I genuinely knew, Matthew. I knew that there was a chance that the individual may read this report. I am humiliated and disappointed and upset at myself that I missed that it was him. I don't know how I missed that it was him. Unless just my own fear of him turned me blind to it.
Maybe even a need to please. After all, for as terrifying as this man now is, he is, in some ways, your mentor, your lodestone. He has only been teaching you for the last 7 months, but it's the time you have spent listening to him, the things you have learned from him, about how to conduct yourself in a hostile environment, how to get the answers you need out of someone, how to protect your sources, how to protect yourself, how to write creatively but honestly. All of these aspects of journalism that you have been noting down religiously as if he is delivering a sermon from the Mount. And maybe that kind of awe for someone can blind you. So the question is, Z, are you taking him up on his offer? Are you visiting his apartment this evening as he is invited? Or are you going to hold back? The choice is yours. There is no wrong answer.
I think as I stare at these whiteboards, I have to actually find that mirror and stare at myself. Because it's such a brilliant question that you asked. Did I know that he would read it? To your point, Professor Hurley has been an inspiration. He is a mentor. And on some levels, I genuinely believe, if I'm being honest with myself, that paper was in veneration to him. I have to accept that invitation. No. Somewhere deep inside, I want to accept that invitation. But he's not blindsiding me this time. I know what I'm walking into. I don't know that he does. I'm going to accept. I'm going to go.
Tell me, Bridgett, how does Z dress for the occasion? Is this a formal event? Or are you keeping things casual? Are you bringing anything? Or are you just going as you are?
I am going to wear the exact outfit that I'm wearing now. Blue jeans that are probably just one size over that she's snugging together with a belt, likely secondhand.
They probably weren't one size over 6 months ago, a year ago when you bought them, but you've been living a pretty fast-paced student diet.
By time, economy, and by the actual currency itself, yeah.
Stress does a number on students.
It does, and this is an unforgiving industry. No, I'm going to wear the same thing. I am going to take my laptop with all of my... Yeah. I am going to bring my laptop. It's a loaner from the student department. They offer those maybe 20 or so out a semester to low-income students. I got one as a part of my scholarship, so I'm going to pack up the campus laptop that I've been using on borrow for the last 4 years, and I'll slip all of that into just a bag, probably a grocery bag, and I will be there on time.
And so you find yourself at his lodgings, knocking on the door. He opens promptly, flashes you that smile. He's dressed better than you, but he doesn't comment on your garb. No doubt that you aren't the first student who has swung by his place. He is wearing a blazer, a shirt, a pair of tweed trousers, likewise cinched with a belt. He has a dusky complexion in the sense that it looks like he has spent some time out in the desert and let it weather his skin. It is more visible, more, well, alluring in this light than in the harsh glare of the auditorium. Please come in, sit. I haven't ordered already, but drinks. We can have drinks straight away. Please sit down. Oh, I see you brought your laptop. Fantastic. I was wondering if I could see some of the inner workings, and he closes the door, of the mind of the young Z.
I will shuffle in, offer one of those awkward, you don't deserve this smile, but I'm just going to flash it anyways, and head inside.
Do you drink wine or soft drinks? He calls from the kitchen.
Soda would be fine, thank you.
Soda, I can do soda. Absolutely. You hear the hiss of a bottle being opened, a fresh one. So I hope you didn't find this too hard, he calls. Am I inviting you here? I do like to get to know some of my students better, and what's it been? 6 months?
7.
7 months. Good heavens. You hear the liquid filling a glass with a glug, 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 and the satisfying sss as it settles. He re-enters the room. It is of a dark brown complexion, presumably Coke or Pepsi. You've never had much of a taste for Pepsi, but it would be impolite to call it out here. It's an Iowan thing. He hands you the glass. I'll get something for myself in a moment. He sits down.
I will accept the glass and I will immediately put it down. And I am going to start fishing out for my laptop. I will pull it into my lap, and then get the screen to populate and get the, unlock protocols ready as he begins speaking.
Oh, work already. Gosh, I was hoping we could have something to eat. Just chat, first of all, but you clearly have a mind for business.
Yeah. You said you were interested in my notes. I figured you'd like to see those early on.
Well, yes, I mean, if most certainly. Do you mind if I sit next to you?
My eyes drop and fall over to the spot next to me, and then I nod, almost in compliance.
Excellent. Sorry, it's a bit of a tight squeeze, he says, sitting on the sofa beside you. But we can huddle around the laptop together, can't we?
Yeah, we can huddle. My fingers are dancing across the keyboards as different files are populating, photos are populating, police reports are populating. But the very last thing that populates are my internal diary notes on how I collect, organize, and streamline all the data that I metabolize. This is my document, my intimate document of how I metabolize data, information, reports. It's the interior belly of my actual truth. And that'll be the very last thing that I populate as I spring the screen up for him.
His eyes widen. This is remarkable, Z. This is... and he turns from the screen to look at you. His face is very close to yours, to the point you can feel his breath. Reminds me of the way my mind works. I think to anyone who wasn't in our field, and I don't mind saying our field, you may be a student, but I see a bright future ahead of you. It would look like the jumbled ravings of a maniac. But to me, it makes perfect sense. It's like I have the cipher and I'm unraveling the code right in front of me. His eyes haven't gone back to the laptop. His eyes are still on you. Oh, drink your... Have your Coke before it goes flat. For goodness sake. It's always best when it's at its most fizzy.
I think the same can be said for you. And I'm going to break eye contact. I'm going to use my nose to point at the laptop screen where the profile of the suspect is front and center. What did I get wrong?
He looks away from you. His smile drops a little as he's reading over the text. Now he's actually paying attention to it and not just filled with empty compliments. Well, I don't know, Z. Are you asking me to play detective here? It looks to me like everything's pointing to one of the security staff. The logical solution. I'm no PI, but I do know Occam's razor, and I can tell you, these security You don't need much qualification to be security guard on a campus. They could come from absolutely anywhere and be capable of anything.
And I'm still trembling just slightly. This proximity is very close, but so are the questions that I'm getting ready to ask. What did I get wrong about your profile?
He turns his head to look at you again. His thigh is pressed against yours. You're practically shoulder to shoulder. My profile? You've not written about me in there, Z. You've written about the attacks on the camp. Aha! Oh, do you think... He, for a moment, leans... Well, you're already uncomfortably close. Unbearably close. He is within kissing distance, and then stands up. Moving away, even nudging your laptop a little. It bumps into the glass on the coffee table in front of you, but nothing spills, nothing over much.
I desperately reach to protect it, which is an indicator that all of her files are on this particular computer and likely nowhere else. And also, she can't afford any damage to come to this laptop. That's not covered under the loan policy.
I wish I could say I was offended. I'm actually, I guess, more impressed that you would have the gall to come here and... No, I get it. You know, and he extracts a finger and waves it at you in a way that is frankly condescending. That's this man all over. For a moment there, I thought you were being brazen and making some kind of accusation. It isn't brazenness, is it? It's paranoia. I've seen the way you twitch, your eyes look left and right in the auditorium whenever I ask you a question. You want the light on anyone but you. You prefer to be back in the shadows. And again, I get it. I'm the same way. I don't want to be the centre of attention. And you're worried that because I'm giving you attention right now, that I have an ulterior motive. Is that it?
No,
I'm sorry. And he puts his hands up. I am sorry. I apologise. That was not my intention at all.
It's not an accusation. And it's not paranoia.
Oh, come on. You're shaking like a leaf. I could feel it through your jeans. You're scared. You're worried about what I have done or what I might do. And I can tell you, Z, and he retakes his chair on the opposite side of the table now. His foot gently nudging the coffee table. Once again, the Coca-Cola sloshes in the glass. Now a small splash of it hits the glass table. I can tell you that I've seen many young women like yourself scared about being in a room with a man with, I suppose, a strong personality. But that doesn't immediately make all of us predators. What can I do? And he leans forward, rests his chin on his hands, to reassure you. Now, I would like for you, Bridgett, our first roll of this flashback.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah. To make and I'm going to give you a choice here. I'm thinking survival and cunning roll, please.
Ooh, okay.
And now is a very good time for you to tell me and the audience. Has Z ever experienced her accursed nature?
No.
No cursed dice for you, then?
No cursed dice. That is going to be 2 hits total.
Maybe ordinarily you wouldn't pick up on this. Maybe normally you would bypass this entirely. It would be easily done. Typically, although you are a somewhat passive person, Z, and you find it difficult to maintain eye contact with most people, it's typical that when Art Hurley, the professor, looks at you, you can't look away from his gaze. It's almost hypnotic. But on this occasion, you do glance down, to where that Coke splashed on the glass tabletop. And you are certain, right now, within that hissing liquid, is something squirming, something small, something to the untrained eye, maybe even just the human eye, seeming microscopic. But right now it is as if your eyes have taken on a more acute quality. Something that you won't come to understand fully for probably a few more years of your life. But you can see that that liquid is wriggling with parasites. And he continues leaning forward. He doesn't know that you have seen this. What can I do to reassure you? Tell me. Maybe pizza. And he leans back again. I can order pizza.
I take a deep breath and I move the laptop. I close it and move it off of this counter. And I move it onto the sofa beside me, upright. My eyes sweep the wriggling, squirming, very likely parasites that I can somehow see moving in the water, moving in the Coke. And I am going to look back to Professor Hurley. It's not an accusation. It's not paranoia. I just don't want to disappoint you. Please tell me what I got wrong in your profile.
He sighs. He moves his hands in a frankly flamboyant manner again, as if to concede defeat. I'm impressed and disappointed at the same time, if that's possible.
Ooh, I wince at the disappointment comment, which I hate myself for that.
You're not going to let this bone go, are you? When you get hold of a thread, you just keep pulling, don't you? And believe me, I'm impressed. As a journalist, that will, well, put you in the mouth of the lion. I should say the jaws of the lion. Maybe I'm a little rattled. Yeah. It will put you in the jaws of the lion more often than not. But, to your credit, it will get you answers. I'm disappointed, though, that you don't know when you're onto a good thing. I could be very good for you, Z. I could be your teacher, here and outside of this university. I recognize something in you, something incredibly bright and powerful, an ability, a natural journalistic tendency. And I want to help shape that. I want to help shape you. But for that to happen, for us to maintain this acquaintance and maybe take it further, make it something more, this is a thread I think you are best served dropping. After all, let's remind ourselves, the university board could well exclude you if you continue to pursue it.
Fine. I'll drop it. And I am going to quickly begin collecting all of my things. Notebooks, snapshot, they slide into the grocery bag. The laptop slides in. Fine, I'll drop it. If you're not going to help me, if you're not going to coach me, if you're not going to help me see through my own errors or you, then I'll drop it. Thank you for the hospitality. I'm sorry I spilled your Coke. And I'm going to stand up and I'm going to move towards the door.
Z. He stands up and he blocks you. Fine. Call my bluff. Like I said, natural journalistic tendencies. Very impressive. Sit down, have a drink.
I stammer back 2 steps. But I manage not to sit down. Tell me what I got wrong in my profile.
You assumed that everyone who was attacked was done so with force. You assumed that every single victim was some drunk student that stumbled into an alley and there was someone who just happened to be in there waiting to plant an assault on them. You seem, in your frank naivety, to assume that that is how these attacks happen, but that isn't how the attacker left their mark on these victims. The attacker made their victims trust them. The attacker groomed these victims, and the attacker, well, didn't attack the victims where they were found. He let them make their own way there after they had forgotten the attack even occurred.
I am very quickly metabolizing that information. Does that feel right? Was that something lurking in my blind side? Because, is that possible? Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, you have no knowledge medically or otherwise of what these parasites might be capable of. The thought, were they roofied, went through your head when you were reading about the 6 or 7 teens that had found themselves unconscious in the grass or in a ditch or on a bench between classes, bearing all the hallmarks of assault, but yeah, no witnesses to the effect. And it would appear that from what Hurley is telling you, that whoever committed these attacks, and let's be clear, you are fairly sure it's Art Hurley right now.
Of course, yes.
Drugged them or infected them so that they would forget. He committed his attack in a place where they felt safe, and then he sent them on their way in some kind of stupor, after which point they would pass out before even getting back to their apartments. And there is a flash of realization for you here, Z. These are just the ones who didn't make it back to their lodgings. How many others may have made it back and woke up in their beds, not remembered what happened the night before, and just gone on? Maybe confused, maybe alarmed, but too afraid to actually say anything.
So I take that step back, and then my hips resettle as my left leg rejoins my right. And it's not that I'm arguing with the professor as much as I'm openly soundboarding, dotting I's and crossing T's in an attempt to make this not conversational, but almost instructional. No, because that wouldn't explain why victim number 2, the Samuel Peterson. But and it's one of those things where I'm pushing him as I'm pushing myself, as I'm trying to just reintegrate this new piece of information into my overall formula, which will eventually end with, I've underestimated the numbers. They're much, much larger. They could be exponentially larger than what we know from reported crimes.
Exactly. He points at you. Exactly. That is the big missing piece of this puzzle, Z. You are quite correct that the vast majority of these victims were assuredly sent back to where they stayed and...
with no memory of the attack.
Maybe even attacked in their own homes. Then there would be no risk. But sometimes if these people were drugged, as your essay alleges, maybe some of them just got up and walked out and didn't even realise it after the attacker had fled. We don't know. We don't know. You don't know. No one, except the attacker, knows.
And my eyes flicker up to his, because let's be super honest in this moment, I'm enjoying this. There's a baseline level while I'm enjoying the validation, the new information that can be integrated into this formula, and pushing back and forth with someone that I feel is a mentor, but also a potential peer in this in this industry. The parasites are the drug. I don't understand the properties of the parasites.
Just imagine how many of the students on this campus have still got those infections untreated if they have never reported being attacked.
Because they don't know that they were attacked.
And think of how quickly those parasites are probably spreading without the aid of the initial attacker. It's terrifying to think of.
Terrifying, perhaps, but it's also clever, isn't it?
I think so. I think there is an animal cunning.
That's a good articulation. It is animalistic in its cunningness. Well, last piece of insight.
Go for it.
And I'll stay.
Good.
What's the primary MO here? And I look at him dead on, because if he doesn't know that I know at this point, we have had a vast miscommunication in this weird flirting educational dynamic that we're pushing back and forth across the floor to each other.
Yeah, there's no warm or even proud smile on his face now. He in fact rolls his eyes. Well, if you can't see that at this point...
Please don't do that. Not when I'm this close. Please, please, please. Please don't dehumanize everything that I've come this far. Please don't do that to me.
He takes a step towards you. You see, students are anxious, nervous, attention-seeking wrecks quite often. He takes another step. They need attention, they need recognition, they need someone to tell them that they are a star, that they will be all right, that they will succeed and they'll have a job waiting for them. As soon as a student has a lecturer, a professor, tell them that, well, they become putty. All of a sudden, they will do anything to please. Do you know how many of the students here come from broken homes? How many students had nothing but abusive teachers at high school? I swear, to teach at a high school, you must hate kids. I love kids. I love students. I love telling them that everything's going to be all right. Because after all those years of abuse, Z, they see someone like me, and they see a father figure, or a brother, or a friend, or a lover. They see someone, maybe all of those things wrapped into one. And, I'm fairly certain he is invading your personal space now, Z. Do you want to take a step back? You are very close to his window. Or is there another course of action? Do you wish to keep pressing him?
No, I want to stand my ground and for once watch a predator close in on me with eye-to-eye contact with an unapologetic stance. What I would love to know is, before he finishes his self-aggrandizing lecture here, can I, with the new delicious information that I have and me looking face-to-face with him, can I identify what his motive is?
Seems to be without even a roll. These parasites are serving a double duty. There's a few reasons you can come to this conclusion. 1. Yes, they are in some manner or other sedating those, maybe even causing a temporary amnesia for those that they are infesting. 2. It is allowing for the proliferation of these parasites, which seems like a very odd objective for a human. But now that you're this close to him again, where he is practically inhaling you, you can see from his open mouth these tiny squamous little worms just crawling out from around the sides of his mouth, where the upper lip and the lower lip meet on either side, and it's just a tiny bit bloody and raw, like his lips are chapped on the edges, and from those tiny wounds, more and more of these wriggling worms are just inching their way up his cheeks, meeting another cluster that is pouring out from the corners of his eyes and from his nostrils, so that his face is an entire wriggling mass of parasites. You don't know whether he's a mother to these things, whether he is just a simple nest, an incubator for them, but it seems that this very cunning, very smart, parasite-like creature in the form of Art Hurley, he wants to infest the entire campus. He wants everyone on it to be a host to his offspring. And that doesn't stop at you.
We're so close. My pupils dilate, and I don't know the articulation for it, but it's the creatures whose eyes blink on a horizontal scale.
Mm-hmm.
Her eyes blink for the very first time as she's face to face with him. I should be horrified by what I'm seeing, because what I'm seeing isn't human, but for some reason everything that I'm seeing feels suddenly natural. It feels like it belongs, and I can't help but to feel in awe of whatever it is that I'm seeing pouring from him, radiating off of him. And if he allows it, I am going to reach up my hand to cup his jaw, especially where I'm looking at this cracked lips and these things. I've never seen anything this beautiful before.
Your hand touches his chin, his beard. You see some of these parasites make their way onto your skin. They seem tentative, nervous, which is odd for a largely unthinking entity, but he doesn't move away as his children slowly course over your fingers and then your hand. Now, Bridgett, I'm going to ask you, as we are coming to the close of this particular flashback, and maybe we will find out at a later point what followed. Do you think you allowed Art Hurley to carry on doing what he was doing? Do you think you backed away? It certainly doesn't seem like you fled in fear. It certainly doesn't seem like you launched him out a window, skewered him, or ripped him to pieces. Do you think it was just a parting of mutual respect? How do you think this went?
I'm going to push something at you, Matthew, and feel free to push it back across the table for me. How far will that unbridled curiosity take her? How deep inside will he allow her to go?
I think if he sees you as a peer, if you manifest your wild form, for example, if your skin begins to split and you reveal yourself to be a monster, revealing it to yourself for the first time, then he's no longer going to see you as just a nervous young woman. He's going to see you as a possible ally. That is how far you could push this if you want to go that route. You can, of course, go the arguably more ethical route of destroying this monster, but right now that does not seem to be on Z's agenda.
No, because that unbridled curiosity, if he's going to let me in, I'm going to have to see how deep this goes. Because to his original lecture, what is the truth? I don't know anything about these parasites. I understand that proliferation is the goal. We could probably discuss some more advantageous distribution tactics, but I don't understand what his end goal here other than spreading them across the campus. I have additional questions, and it's so difficult to act when you don't have all of the missing pieces. I want to hunt down those missing pieces, and I want to have exacting clarity on what he is, what I potentially may be, and what he's doing. Depending on those answers, our truth may change.
In that case, he says to you, "What say I hold them back for a time, so that we can keep that mind of yours nice and lucid. Keep this our little secret. Because I can sense there is something about you, Z, that isn't quite like I am, but is deeply interesting to me. So you find out about me, and I find out about you. And we'll see where our relationship heads from there.
I withdraw my hand. I watch his children squirm and wriggle and writhe around my hands. And I just nod in agreement. It's not a submissive agreement. It's an actual agreement. Okay.
As he smiles again, his lips crack even further. A trickle of blood runs down from one of them. Good. Wonderful. Time to order pizzas, I think. You should probably wash off your hands with hot water and soap. These things, they do have a way of lingering. And he heads to pick up his cell phone from the counter, apparently now taking you into his trust. And as we will leave this flashback now, Bridgett, there are several valuable things you learned in your encounter with Art Hurley. Several things that you took with you into becoming the primal that you are today. Things that will assist you in dealing with Victor Latendresse and his victims. Certain realizations you made about the way Hurley conducted himself and the way he hid his nature. But we will revisit those when we return to the present.
Yeah, Trudy, thanks for the apology. I appreciate that. Now that we've gotten that awkwardness out of the way, I'm following up on this entire Victor Latendresse thing after the after the Netflix special. And
you watched it? Did you like it? Did you like it? That's my first special. I work for Netflix now.
Yeah, Trudy. It was actually really well done. I have a couple follow-up questions for you, though, that could actually be a big help on this parallel investigation that I'm running.
I mean, anything you can do to promote it. We are a slave to the viewers. You know, if we don't get a peak of views in the first 2 weeks, that's it. Shafted. No more specials, right? Okay, so yeah, you hit me with it. I know it's Jesus. It's 3:20 in the morning. Yes. Yeah. What do you need? What do you need?
Okay, so the AMA that you ran on the Reddit, interesting stuff.
Oh wow, yeah, you found it.
I did. I also found a fairly interesting question in one of your responses. Who was the most interesting person that you interviewed?
Now her silence is intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah, I shouldn't have name dropped. I was excited because that was like 2 days before the go live date that I did that AMA, and I mean, no one seemed to pick up on it at the time. I guess no big surprise you did.
Talk me through that interview, Trudy.
I mean, it was... Look, I didn't believe it. Okay? There was nothing to say that this Latendresse, that was even his real name. And then someone obviously heard that we were making the series, because I got a phone call pretty much same time of night as your call to me right now. Someone telling me, my name's Samuel Latendresse. I knew Victor, I was his brother, we grew up in the same household. Okay? So I thought, yeah, right, this is just some crank. But then he was able to fill in quite a lot of details, and I was able to double check some of them after, and he wasn't bullshitting. I mean, he wasn't bullshitting in as much as Victor, he knew where Victor grew up. He got that right. I was able to track that down. But here's the thing, I never actually I never met Samuel Latendresse. I got his details over the phone as much as he was prepared to give me, but I can't just put a phone interview in a Netflix. They don't like the audio things with the wiggly lines on Netflix. They prefer visual prompts. Video. So anyway, I used the information I could, and I said, do you mind if I quote you? And he said, absolutely not, I don't want to be quoted. I'm giving you this so you've got the full picture. and I filled in a lot of blanks. It made me understand the killer a little more.
Okay, so I understand why you didn't cite Samuel Latendresse in the documentary. I understand why you didn't use any of the audio capture. What were the blanks that he filled in? What was this new perspective that you were able to gain onto Victor?
Well, I mean, they seem to have really been through the mill as kids. They were in a foster home, and I mean, Victor Latendresse was definitely in a foster home. Got that down pat, definitely there. Again, couldn't find record of the Samuel, but records up to about the 70s are pretty spotty, so I didn't just dismiss it out of hand, okay? And what I figured out was, well, Latendresse is a bit of a tragic figure. He was shoved around from home to home, always had his brother with him, but that's literally the only contact he had with anyone or anything that he knew. And every place he went, the things he was doing were getting worse and worse. You know, starts off with thieving, then he's, pulling the legs off of spiders, and moves on to one night, Samuel wakes up, finds out Victor set his bed on fire. It's a sort of story old as time at this point. We're talking Otis Toole style serial killer stuff. So anyway, what I was able to figure out is he really, and I guess this is apparent from the crimes, he really hated women. I mean, he saw women as like the big bad of the world. I think Samuel said it's because his mother never loved him, because his mother always refused to find him. Even when Victor found out who his mother was, she refused. And that was the thing. He was getting angry over the phone at this point. He was saying our mother would not see him, even when he knew exactly where she was. And I guess he took that frustration out on all those poor young women and made them out to, in Samuel's words, look like whores. And I guess, it's just a genesis point. It was helpful. It was helpful to me to be able to frame the documentary in the right way. And I get it. It's no different than Norman Bates or anything else, any other carbon copy serial killer, but at least I had a picture or a frame to put it in now.
So Trudy, just to clarify, somehow there's a leak that you are putting together a Netflix special on Victor. This Samuel, his supposed brother, reaches out to you to give you added perspective to help frame an empathy profile on Victor. And I'm not saying that maliciously as much as I'm trying to understand his purpose for reaching out to you. He was giving you background context for empathy?
Look, you've got to get the viewers in some way. There's the reason they made the guy in the Dharma documentary look as sexy as possible. It's not because good old Jeff was a hunk of man. It was because people aren't going to watch if he's just some goggle-eyed creep. Sex sells, and in this case, he's a screwed-up sexual puppy, Victor Latendresse. He rejects his mother, takes it out on women.
Okay. Last question for you here, Trudy, and then I'm going to look at my two companions in the car, because likely this phone call was on speaker. Last question for you. Do you have any type of contact information on Samuel?
Well, I shouldn't just give it out.
Well, you shouldn't, again, but...
Yes.
She is clearly chewing her lip. You can't see her, but you know this is what she does all the way back from your university days whenever she got tense. Now that you're picturing her quite clearly. Yeah, whenever she got nervous, she would chew through her lip until it bled.
I owe you one, don't I? Probably more than one, after what we put you through at university. Look, I don't know where he is exactly. I know that he had an area. I was able to see where he was calling from. It was a landline, would you believe? It wasn't even a cell phone.
Well, that's old school.
Well, yeah. Do you know Allenstown?
Yeah, I know Allenstown.
Well, that's all I've really got for you. I mean, again, he didn't want us to meet him. We're not going to doorstep him. We got a lot out of that phone call. And he sounded a bit unhinged, if you ask me. I don't think he would have made a very good talking head on camera. You should have seen Donette Brigham. I mean, speaking of talking heads.
I just barely stopped myself from scoff laughing at that. I'm better than that, but in this moment, I'm really irritated with Miss Brigham, and that was funny in this moment.
Silas doesn't. Silas laughs.
Oh shit! Am I on speak? Oh no, this call's over. This call's over. Look, don't quote me. I don't agree to be quoted on any of this. I don't know what you're writing for right now, Z. I said I'm hanging up. I'm hanging up.
And she hangs up.
Yeah, it was still worth it.
Now, Silas, you had put in a call with the district attorney, and tell me, what exactly did you want the attorney to dig up? Because this will be yielded pretty quickly if it's something that I can grant you.
Basically, he's just wanting to get the original, ideally the entire police cases for all of the murders, at least pictures of the crime scenes and autopsy reports. Because his primary goal is he wants to start building up a profile of data, particularly the brands, but any data he can kind of start to build a pattern, basically.
It isn't your preferred method, but those attachments start getting emailed through to you. Yeah, no, it's all been digitized now in Junction City. It isn't all paper archives prone to flooding. Now it's all Dropboxes and Google Drives and other more secure methods. And so, yeah, it is a simple enough thing for the attorney to get in touch with the clerk and say, yeah, you're pulling an all-nighter. I've got a friend who needs something. And so, yeah, you start getting your emails through, and you've got to open them up on this painfully small screen, Silas.
Are all the people who were found dead, do they all have the I Heart You or I Heart Not brand?
Oh, yeah.
Which one?
It is a mix.
Okay, so they all have a brand, but which one is which? Okay.
Yeah, they've all got a brand, and those brands are often in places that a brand would not normally be able to get. So in some cases under a fingernail, sometimes within an eyelid, but a good mortician, because guess whose name is on some of these? Which pathologist? It's Dr. Pages here.
Right.
Was able to find them. What's more, as predicted, these bodies were all found in what could be considered sexually provocative or rather humiliating poses.
Okay.
It does appear that Victor Latendresse has a problem with women.
I had picked that subtle cue up, yes. How long is this drive going to be? Like a couple hours?
You've only got another 30 minutes to go, and then you'll be at the address that Dr. Pages is driving you to.
Okay, then Silas is going to do some quick comparisons, just things like hair color and age, physical characters, to see if there's any kind of similarity, like certain brands attract to certain kinds of women, but I expect that I'll probably not get a conclusive answer during the course of this drive.
I can give you a conclusive answer immediately, I'm afraid, Eddy, in that no, indeed, there is no physical commonality. This is one of those things that frustrated the police of the time, that these were women of various ages, various body types and appearances, ethnicities and cultural backgrounds. To be quite honest, the only thing, although you don't recognise these women, but given what you know about the three women who you have now encountered in one form or other, in the form of Sophie, Donette, and Lee, is the thing that might have attached some of them, the thread there, is maybe some, maybe all of them were in some way accursed, or on the way to becoming accursed. And when I say becoming, I don't mean making that first Faustian pact. fact, much as in the case of Sophie, yeah, maybe she was due to come back as one of the dead. And that was truncated. She was killed before it could happen. Maybe the autopsy prevented it. Maybe when she first emerged as the dead, she was literally a raging phantasm, and rather than anyone, such as yourself, being there to talk her down and say, welcome to this new world, unfortunately, Dr. Pages, in his haste to defend himself, devoured her.
Yeah, what kind of asshole would destroy evidence at the crime scene during the investigation? I swear.
I know, right? The disrespect of it.
It does, not the destruction of evidence, but there is the flash of thought through your mind, Silas, that, yeah, if anyone ever discovered that a dead in the making was basically eaten by a Gaki, that could cause a massive diplomatic incident.
Mm-hmm. So, then one last thing, if we have time, is timeline of the murders. Do they alternate? Because the other thing I'm thinking of is the classic thing of taking a flower, petals, I love you not, I love you not. I'm wondering if they specifically oscillate. It's one after the other in a timeline.
It's a good thing to look for. It is not a part of the pattern.
So I just want to rule that out. So, okay.
I'm prepared, Eddie, to give you another curse die there, because if anything, that tells you that there is no pattern that would be discernible to mortal investigation at this point.
We have ruled out every discernible mortal-related pattern. It has to be a supernatural pattern.
Exactly. It was worth cutting through that meat to get to the bone. Now, we will get to this house in Allenstown. Well, you've seen better places. Allenstown is like the run-down sister of Junction City. It isn't as big, it isn't as popular. The only industry out here was timber, and most of those forests were torn up and burned down a long time ago. It is by no means a thriving community. And this building, where apparently one of these victims from the early 1970s, according to your files, her name was Holly Blue. This is where she lived and where she was found. It doesn't look like this tenement building has changed a great deal in the last 50 years. Of note, and due to the time at which this crime is said to have taken place, the vast majority of crimes took place in the 90s. There was a lull of around 20 years, and between the 1970s and 1990s. And just to create that timeline in your minds, when Angel, Silas's sister, went missing, that was the 70s.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This Holly Blue was found in the 70s, and she's just about the only body that was. So this attachment to the, I guess, string of La Tendresse killings is a pretty recent one, and it is still debated. You know how Jack the Ripper has official victim list and unofficial add-ons almost? This is the position Holly Blue occupies. Plus, this isn't in Junction City, which is where most of the crimes took place.
Okay. And then I remember Lee Fry said she was attacked about 25 years ago, which would have been the tail end of the 90s run.
That's quite correct.
Well, then I suppose we drive up in my cheap, affordable vehicle. Again, probably about 20, 30 years old at this point, but I don't like throwing things away if they still work, and it still works. I turn off the radio. I've been subjecting everyone to my favourite radio stations. I like the radio, and it's a fun invention. And I say, alright, well, make sure nobody jumps out and murders me.
Stare at you.
You can't take a joke, can he, Z? You can take a joke.
My nose wrinkles, and that is about the extension of a smile that I am willing to grant for that joke. Yeah, I can take a joke. Come on.
If that was a joke, I would have taken it.
That seems like a good prompt for you to get out of the car, Dr. Pages.
Silas would appreciate the perspective I have sometimes of time. It's fascinating seeing things age.
It's especially fascinating to see a building that, in theory, these places outlive most humans. The humans show age far faster than something made of brick and mortar. In your case, Dr. Pages, well, you get to see the entire world crumble into ruin around you, and not that you could imagine this tenement building was ever a place of glamour and glitz, but now the front door up the stoop is boarded along with any front windows. There's no consigned for demolition signs on it, but you can't imagine there's anyone living here legally at this point. Z, can I ask you to make a enigmas and cunning roll as you are leaving the car? Z specifically.
So, on the curse die, there are already 2 successes and a 10. On the rest, there's another 10. Oh, Jesus, and no other successes. It's 8 and up, right? Not 7 and up?
8 and up. That is a lot of hits. Okay, well, I'll give you something then. As Pages steps up toward the boarded over door, which it's not lots of crooked planks. This isn't Night of the Living Dead. It is just one thick sheet of plyboard with "Do Not Enter" stamped on it. You pick up on something. You wouldn't want to call it spidey sense, Z? But all those tiny bristles, those ones that are particularly sensitive to danger, just emerge, pointed. And it's nothing, it's not the building itself at first anyway. It's a cable that leads into the building, across the street. Why is this building still wired for sound? That is a telephone line that's leading in here. Usually they disconnect buildings like this. There's no need to keep them wired in, especially with everything going underground these days. Maybe the city here, maybe they just don't care to remove it. Maybe it's more money than it's worth. But then as you follow the line, Z, back to the tenement building, the building itself looks hungry. These windows, blocked as they are, look like dark, cavernous eyes that are just looming over you. And the doorway, blocked as it is, feels like if you were to remove that stopper, you would be opening a mouth that's had a chain lashed across it for quite some time.
Those moments where time slow, then also speed up simultaneously, that's what's happening with Z. That's what's happening with me as I'm connecting these threads of this house feels sentient, it feels hungry, it feels aware, and this is very likely the phone line that was leaving to, and then all of that just very quickly just rebounds, snaps back, and I realize that somebody I care about is on that front porch. I snarl, and I'm going to throw open the door, and I am going to call out, "Monty, don't!"
I pause in my actions, look behind to Z, and sensing her urgency, I'll, as I do have once again free curse dice, just quickly activate my hidden sight, my Tenbr's sight, and see, is there something hidden here of a mundane nature? If it's not mundane, I'll be able to sense, well, I'll be able to cause a clash against magical things, not necessarily revealing them, but let's just see. Suddenly I do as she says and stop.
Yes, indeed, you do once again have 3 curse dice, because while you bled one for using Dire Command, I awarded one to you after. You are going to have to provoke a clash, I'm afraid, which tells you, the player, something, but doesn't tell Monty anything until we determine your result. So let's do Esoterica, and I would like Resolve here. What you are trying to overcome here is 3. 3 hits. Or 3 or more, please.
And that is a 10, 1, 2, and 3 hits then.
3 hits, you didn't need to use that momentum, you didn't need to turn it into an enhancement. Yeah, you're about to reach out and touch that plywood board that's covering the door, and then you hear, even though you've heard Z's voice, I mean, you're still leaning slowly, and then your hand stops. And quite of their own volition, your legs move and your feet take a couple of steps back down that stoop. Yeah. Walking straight into a building like this feels... well, suicidal. This building could be your cousin, Monty. This building feels hungry. It wants to drain people that enter it. You know, you can sense on a deep and spiritual level with your tenebrous sight, but also by the nature of the family that has borne you, that there are any number, probably dozens, of ghosts in there. That this building is made of the angry dead. In fact, probably the only reason it is still standing is as a vacuum of life. That occasionally a rough sleeper will break into here, get a bit of kip, and will never wake up. And what's more, no one will ever find them. Because anyone who isn't desperate is just going to cross the road and walk the other way. The only people who enter a place like this are the truly down and out, the unlucky, the unfortunate, the people who won't be missed.
How utterly terrible. Fascinating, but terrible. I step back. Yes, even a simple summoning in there, if I wasn't immediately consumed, could go very, very awry. Maybe I'll conduct the summoning from outside, if I can.
Eddy, I see that you've posted in text your current theory. It's up to you if you want Silas to voice it, if you think he has the knowledge to voice it.
Has Z and informed the rest of us beyond just no stop?
I think... So I jumped out of the car, I said no stop. Monty is moving back towards her, and I am moving towards him, so we're probably going to connect maybe somewhere near the car that would probably still be within earshot. My hackles are up. I feel I'm radiating a predator facing down another predator at this point, but my attention is on the house as this entity of a predator. And I'm going to say to Monty, can you feel it? You see it?
Oh, I can, Z. This is a very, very large receptacle of death.
Wait, what? What? Less flowery, more detail. What do you see?
The whole building, Silas, is a void that consumes life. If I were to walk in, if anyone were to walk in, maybe even you were to walk in, the building would consume you, utterly and whole.
This building feels alive.
How in the hell does someone call from a building? And then Silas stops and notices the phone line first time. He's so used to seeing past these because they've been around for decades. He's lived his life around them. But he sees the phone line and goes, unless the house made the call?
I mean, you're saying it has sentience. I suppose it might.
That house is sentient. It hungers, and I can feel it from here.
Yes, but I mean sentient as a beast, but sentient as a being that can make phone calls. How fascinating.
We know some horrible stuff happens in this house, and that is prime ground for people like me to get made.
Yes.
If this place is sucking up life, though, I don't want to cross into that. Which means he can't be dead. Like capital D dead like me, because he would have been sucked into whatever this house is. Ergo, if someone called from here, it has to be the building. And if it is that kind of liminal space, and we do know that Victor got ported out of one place and his weapon was ported out of one place, is there a connection there? Now we're moving into space I don't know that much about. If only I had a sorcerer. Oh wait, I do know a sorcerer, but get to that in a minute. Definitely should not be going in there.
Oh no, we're definitely not going in there. Not suicidal.
But if we do a summoning, I don't know if that's a good idea either.
No.
Monty, you could summon a phantasm here. The phantasm would be of a fright template, as per the inheritance. However, just because something is of a fright template, there are 4 templates of a base adversary, and the fright is, I guess, the second most powerful. It may be part of something larger, so I'm not going to kid you here. If this house is summonable, you're not just going to be able to kill it, consume it in one fell action. You might be able to do that with a part of it, a brick, essentially, but not the entire building. You could coax it awake with your inheritance. You could bring it into paying all attention to you.
Well, I'm not completely moronic. I don't think I have the power to consume this building, force it to do my bidding. But maybe we don't need to do that. Maybe we just need to talk. And so, perhaps I'm just going to try a bit of diplomacy and summon the building's person to talk. That's all. I'm not going to make any demands. Just speak. Like equals.
So you turn to face the building, your eyes still shod in black, and you lower your voice. You speak the language of the dead. And is this what you're doing? Are you summoning the building to talk?
Yes, after all, theoretically, it does need to follow my commands for the rest of the scene, so the only command I will give is a very polite version of, "We'd like to speak, if we may."
So Silas, from the car where you have not exited, though the window is down. Z from the sidewalk beside Dr. Page's. And Dr. Page's, hands raised slightly, part in defense, part in beckoning, poised as if prepared for something to go horribly wrong. You coax this House of the Dead to pay attention. The plyboard that is coating its threshold slams open onto the stoop like a tongue just rolling out, and it clatters down the steps. There is nothing but darkness within, and a voice emerges from inside, and that voice makes a sound. That sound is...
You have listened to an episode of Red Moon Roleplaying, where we play the scenario Suffer My Sins for Curseborne, which is published by Onyx Path Publishing. Story guide was Matthew Dawkins, and we were also joined by Bridgett, Jeffries, and Eddy, Webb. The music was created by Atrium Carceri and was used with permission from their label, Cryochamber. Please check out cryochamber.bandcamp.com or their YouTube channel for more of their lovely dark ambient. We would like to give massive thanks to our champions of the Red Moon: Martin Heuschober, Simon Cooper, David, Julia, Camilla, Bob Lange, Cameron, Graham Barey, Doug Thomson, Lily, Mike Parker, Maciej, and Black Templar for their generous support. And we'd of course also like to thank all of our other patrons. Without your support, the show would not be possible. If you want to support our work, please check us out on Patreon. You can get access to our Call of Cthulhu bonus campaign Shadows of Yog-Sothoth with Matthew as our keeper, as well as bonus campaigns for Cult of Indy Lost and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay there. On top of that, we also offer early and raw access to all of our recordings. You can also hear your name read on the show as a champion of the Red Moon, as well as play Cult with us. Most importantly, that support is what keeps the show going, so do check us out there. Thank you again for listening, and remember that the world is cursed.